Oh, it's wonderful to be here and to see so many participants. And as Rabbanit Yael said, the topic is can we undo the past? And I'm sure that when you hear these words, they echo in two different ways. They echo because we're dealing with wondering how can we undo the past? Can we undo the past of the last month ever since Simchat Torah? But this is really a topic that the Masechta is dealing with, and Mishonim and Achronim. And I wanted to share with you thoughts which are rather heavy. Heavy, I mean, in Lumdish, to see how really Rishonim and Achronim dealt with this question when we are trying to pay for Nazikim and somebody has been hurt because of us, because of our interaction, uh, different kinds of hurt we see in the Masechta, and we're giving him money or repaying all kinds of debts to the other person. What are we doing? Are we really trying to undo the past? Is that really an option? And we know the four nezikim, avot nezikim, shor, bo, mav'eh, ve'hev'el. And all of the above deal with when one person or any one of these four is hurting another man's mamun. What does that mean? I'm not hurting the other person's body. I'm hurting things that he owns. And there is one parak, parak Chovel, the eighth parak, where we start to deal with what happens if somebody hurt a person's body. And these are two different discussions in the Gemara, and I want us to look at both. So let's begin with the question, what happens if somebody's his house, his cattle, his belongings have been destroyed or hurt? So what happens according to Masechta? We have to pay. You're chayav. A man is chayav and zikin. There are all kinds of different ways to be chayav, and all kinds of pturim that you learned. But the question is, when I pay somebody for damaging him, how much money do I decide to pay that person and when? So there are two very big questions that the poskim in our times we're dealing with. Because in this idea that I hurt another person's belongings and then I pay, usually I would think, if I would ask any one of you, the reason I pay money is because I'm trying to, to undo the past. Let's say I burned somebody's house. Okay, so I would like to give him enough money to rebuild his house, right? I'm trying to give, in Hebrew you say pitzuim. I'm trying to give money, so somehow things will be repaired. But if we look at the halachot, we see that that's not exactly the case. There are two very big issues that we see throughout the Gemara. One is the question of grama ben nezikin, that if any hurt that I do to another person, I'm just trying to repay the hurt and make him somehow feel better and rebuild his life, it wouldn't matter if I'm hurting him directly or indirectly. And yet we see throughout a lot of halachot that if it's indirect damage, what's called Gemara, and indirect is not so indirect, just a little far from direct damage, then suddenly I'm patur. That's a very big sugya, and we will not go into that sugya. That would be a different shiur on grammar and niziki. But I want to deal with another issue. Most of you learned Shen, and Shen, we know that if somebody eats, if I have cattle eating in somebody's house, so then you're chai, right? But if it's in the street, you're patur. Shen b'rshut harabim patur, b'rshut hanizak chayav. So let's just imagine my dog is eating your vegetable patch. Okay. So how much money would I have to pay you? And if we read the sugya, we see something very, very disturbing. The sugya in Bava Kamma, Daf Tzadi Aleph, says that I decide on the payment not according to how much I've damaged, which is what I would think, but I have a different calculation, and that calculation is very, very, very disturbing. So those of you who have the Makor can look with me, and those who don't, I'll just read the Gemara and I'll translate as I go along. So we're in Bava Kamma Daf Mem Zayin, Amud Aleph, says Rava, ואמר רבא, אין שמין לפרה בפני עצמה ולוולד בפני עצמו, אלא שמין לוולד על גב הפרה. שאם אין אתה אומר כן, נמצא אתה מכחיש את המזיק. וכן אתה מוצא בקוטע ידו של עבדו של חברו, וכן אתה מוצא במזיק שדה של חברו. So Rava says here that let's say I had my animal eat or hurt my Eved's hand, okay? Or let's say I destroyed I hurt one of your animals and now she lost her baby. So how much do I have to pay? What I would think is that if you had a cow and that cow was supposed to be giving birth, so I would have to pay the value of what was lost, which means that the cow that was supposed to be given birth to. But suddenly Rava says, no, that's not what you do. You look at the cow. You see how much that cow costs now and how much it cost when it was pregnant, and that's the amount that you pay. You have to understand it's a much lesser amount. Let me just describe it in something that's more connected to our world. What would happen if I would come to your car and I would destroy one of your wheels? Okay, how much does a wheel cost? Let's say in Israel, 500 shekels you have to pay for one wheel. Sometimes if you add the other one because it hurts the car, so it's 1,000. But if I take the entire car, how much does a car cost? It can cost, let's say, 100,000. So a car with a wheel or without a wheel, will that make a big difference in selling the car? Nothing. You wouldn't pay more for or less, much less for a car, let's say a Tesla, just because one of its wheels wasn't working, right? Because you're selling the entire car. So the small damage would just be consumed because you're talking about a much larger damage to the entire car. Another example, let's say one of my kids took a rock and threw it on the Buckingham Palace and broke one of the windows. How much does a window in Buckingham Palace cost? I guess a lot. But if I would sell the entire palace, a palace with a broken window or without a broken window, would that make a difference? It wouldn't change the amount that you would pay for the palace. And that's what Rava says. Rava says, I don't pay for what I hurt. I look at the entire piece. I look at the entire cow, look at the entire the field, look at the entire person. And that's how I decide how much I pay. This is a decision that will cause everybody to pay much less than what we would expect. The money that you would receive would not be enough to fix the damages that were caused to you. Why does Rava say that? So Rava explains himself, and he says, אין שומעים לפרה בפני עצמה ולבלב בפני עצמו, שאם אי אתה אומר כן, נמצא אתה מכחיש את המזיק. Says Rava, when one person hurt another person's mammon, Yael, I threw a rock and I broke your window. So why won't I have to pay for repairing the window? I'll tell you why. Because it will cost too much money for Yael. It will be too much for her. She's not getting paid a lot for teaching Gemara. And we don't want her to lose a lot of money. So we'll decide to give her a different amount. That's a very strange thing that Rava says. And Rav Acha asks, many years later, he asked Rav Ashi, Rav Acha B'Red Rava asks Rav Ashi, okay, so Yael's going to lose a lot of money. So what? If, according to the law, I broke something, I should pay for what I broke. I destroyed something, so I have to repair it. What? Why? Because I'm going to lose money? Because it's hard for me to pay? That's why we're not making me pay the entire amount? How could that be? And the Gemara's answer, משום דאמר לי, פרה מעברת זקתך, פרה מעברת שי מינן לך. Says the Gemara, says Rav Ashi, because it is a deen, because in truth, any damage, you can definitely look at it in two ways. When I destroy a window, did I hurt the window or did I hurt the house? This is a real serious question. On one hand, I hurt the window. On the other hand, I hurt the house, because the meaning of the window is because it's part of a house. So this is not according to Deen. This is just another way to look at the Deen, and we choose this way instead of the other way. So this Gemara is very, very hard, because after we learned finally, somebody pays for his Nezikin, we suddenly find out that the amount that a person pays is a very low amount because of this way of calculating the payment. And this Gemara has caused a lot of poskim nowadays to feel very uneasy, because many situations you will see that a person will pay nothing. Let's give another example. From this Gemara, the Netivot in the Shulchan Aruch was posking that whenever you have to pay for damaging, you have to see what's the cost of what you hurt by seeing how much it costs to sell it. So if you'll damage my hat, we have to see how much, what's the market for this hat. If you damage my glasses, you have to see what's the market for my glasses. Now this hat, when I brought it, was, I don't know how much. Now that I'm wearing it, it's already secondhand. How much does it cost? Much less. My glasses, can I sell them to anyone? These are very personal glasses. Nobody here, how many are we? Well, almost 200. Nobody here would pay any money for buying these glasses, because they're only made for me, for Yael Shimoni. So if the Netivot is right, many things that you can damage me, you'll pay nothing for. And he's actually pasking this halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, and that's a very, very strange pasking. And if we read the Netivot, and also the Mishnah Berurah quotes in the Chafetz Chaim, that even if you did damage someone, you don't really have to pay unless what you damaged is goods that he could actually sell them on the market. And I think that's very, very, very disturbing. When you learn the Masechet and you get to Daf Mem Zayin and you read this and then you see it in the Shulchan Aruch, it's shocking. And how do we understand it? So I want to show you two different ways of understanding this. One way will be pretty surprising, and it's actually a text from Rav Kook. Rav Kook writes regarding Hilchot Nezikin, and he has a very interesting text. I was taught this text by my husband, Rav Shimoni, and I remember the first time I read it, and I was so surprised that Rav Kook says, "Yael, you're learning Baba Kamma, you didn't understand. You thought that what you're learning is the laws of Torah, how you help somebody repair the damages that you caused them. That's wrong." So I'll read the Rav Kook. Those who have him, it's a text from Al Pilei Torah, and I'm repeating. This is very, very rare text. Okay, most of what we'll see will go against Rav Kook, but I want to start from him because he opens our minds to an interesting thought. Says Rav Kook the following: העונשים החברתיים, בייחוד בשביל היזק ממון, יש להם שני מקורות נפשיים, טוב ורע. Okay, Rav Kook says you should know that all the laws Rabbanit Michelle called the laws that lawyers deal with, when you see the Torah's laws of how to work with society, העונשים החברתיים, social law, בייחוד בשביל היזק ממון, especially if you're talking about nezikin, they have two different sources in the soul, a good source and a bad soul. What's the good and what's the bad? The good נובע מתוך ההכרה שאסור לעשות עוולה, והעושה עוול צריך שיוסר כדי שתתחזק ההכרה הטובה הזאת. The good source of nezikin, the real source of Hilchot Nezikin, is that if I hurt you, if I burn your house, if I destroyed your window or your Tesla or whatever, the problem is that I need to do tshuva, and that's why I should pay you money, because I need to do tshuva, I need to do repentance. That's the good source of nezikin. The bad source, השני, בא מתוך צרות שהאיש האחר אין לו ליהנות משלי או לנגוע בשלי, מפני שההרגשה של השלי ושל האני חזקה ומגושמת באין שיעור. Says Rav Kook, if I want somebody to pay me because I was hurt, that's bad. That's bad. Yeah, you shouldn't take your belongings so seriously. If somebody hurt your belongings, that's what God wanted. That's no big deal. The fact that you're lacking is not the reason why God said that somebody else has to pay. The only reason that a mazik needs to pay is because he needs to repent, not because he needs to help the other person undo the past. Because it's only mammon. It's only money. It's only a house. It's only a car. It's only a cow. No big deal. Don't take it so seriously. That's not what we're discussing. And that's bad, says Rav Kook. Rav Kook says, don't mix the dinim of the Torah and the dinim of regular law. Lawyers, they care about money. That's why they make people pay a lot of money. That's bad. The Torah doesn't want people to pay money just to help other people. It's not about the nizak. It's all about the mazik. So that's Rav Kook. So according to Rav Kook, according to this idea, we shouldn't be surprised that the Hilchot of Nezikin don't help the person who was hurt, because they were never supposed to do that. They were only supposed to tell the person who hurt the other person to beware and that he's doing something bad. But the money is not really there to help the other side to rebuild his life after whatever catastrophe happened. And of course, these words of Rav Kook are very, very, very strange and hard to accept, even though we see many times when Rabbanim and Achronim and philosophers, Jewish philosophers, try to understand the laws of the Torah, a lot of times they reach that and they say, no, you have to understand the laws of the Torah are not like the usual laws. They're not there to help people. They're there just to make people become better in front of God. For example, why do we give tzedakah? It's not to help other people. Tzedakah is to help ourselves, so we'll be righteous. Okay, like that's one way to look at the laws of the Torah. But what I want to show you is that many poskim nowadays looked at this sugya and said, this can't be. This can't be true. We have to find a different way to calculate how much damage we have people to pay, because they don't agree with Rav Kook, and they have to find a way to read the sugya differently. So I have here a few people. I don't know if you know all of them. One of them is rather famous nowadays, Rav Asher Weiss. But I wanted to start from Chazon Ish, which is also very famous, and Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and then get to Rav Asher Weiss. So each one of these Gdolim, which are all Gdolim of our times, looked at the Chiddush of the Netivot and said the Netivot was wrong. He did not learn well the sugya. We're cholek on him. If I destroy your window, I will have to pay for the repair of the window, not for the amount of how much the house is less with the window. Even though Rava said what he said in the sugya. How do they do it? So let's start with the Chazon Ish. And the Chazon Ish says, and I'm reading in Shut Or LeTzion. Or LeTzion is Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul, and he starts by saying that the Chafetz Chaim was pasking like I described, that if I broke a window, then I'm just going to have to pay the amount that the house went down, which is really nothing. And that's what says here in Shut Or LeTzion. הכנה מגבי שמשה, שמים אגב הבית, כמה שווה הבית עם שמשה בחלון, כמה שווה בלי שמשה, וכיוון שאין הפרש, פטור המזיק לשלם. Okay? People who learned Bava Kamma well, learned Bava Kamma Biyun, might get to the maskana, the halachic decision, that if somebody breaks a window, he doesn't have to pay, because it's not very expensive. The house doesn't lose from its amount, and it's selling a house without a window or with a window will not make a difference. But the Chazon Ish says, לשוט אור לציון אסכולה. דהרי החזון איש כתב, וזה לשונו, ונראה, דכיוון דאין בית עומד למכירה, אלא לתקן בדקי, משלם מה שחברו מפסיד בהוצאות התיקון. עד כאן לשונו. So the Chazon Ish said, we have to look at reality. If I'm now trying to sell a house, that is true. If this house is on market, the fact that you broke a window, you won't have to pay. But if somebody breaks a window in my house, and my house is not on market, I'm planning to live there for a long time, it's not on sale. So then, if somebody broke a window in my house, because it's not on sale, we have to see how much money I'm planning to put on repairing the house, and that's what that person will have to pay. So the Chazon Ish very easily does what we call an okimta. What does that mean? He's reading the sugya in Bava Kamma and Zayin, and it says all that Rava said is only dealing with something that's on sale. But if something is not on sale, it's in use, we have to see how much a person who's using it will spend in order to find the exact same thing to spend again. So if somebody will break my glasses because they're in use, he will have to pay me the amount that I will go and pay for glasses myself because I'm using them. But if I'm a store that sells glasses, then he won't have to pay the same amount. So that's a big chiddush of the Chazon Ish, but let's understand the chiddush. The Chazon Ish says that when you pay somebody money, you're really paying the person. We're not looking at my glasses as like an idea of glasses. We're checking, are these glasses that I'm wearing, or am I selling them? And that will make a big difference of how much I pay. So the Chazon Ish is saying, mamash hafuch from Rav Kook, because the Chazon Ish says, when the Torah decides how much you pay, the Torah wants you to look at the person that you hurt, not only at the object, but what does the object means to the person? And what the object means to the person, that will change the amount of money that you will have to pay. And that's why dafka things that are in use, you'll end up paying more for than things that are for sale. A similar thing says Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. He also found this halacha very hard. And he asks, he says, I don't understand this. How could this be? How could the Netivot Shalom be pasking like this? I'm cholek. And he says, according to this idea of the Netivot Shalom, let's imagine that you didn't break my glasses. You walked into my house and took a letter that somebody wrote to me, and you tear the letter. You have to pay. A letter is a sentimental thing. Okay, how much does a letter cost? Nothing, right? A piece of paper. Do you have to pay for tearing somebody's letters? Let's say love letters that somebody has, or letters from his children, or somebody who passed away, and he has a piece of writing, and somebody was destroying that piece of writing. Does he pay? So it says Reb Shlomo, I think he has to pay. Why? Because you have to see how much that means to me. You don't see how much it costs to buy a piece of paper in the store. You have to see how much it means to Yael. And says Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and he quotes a different Gemara, the Gemara in Daf Yud, if I'm not mistaken, that the Torah said, Makeh nefesh be'ema yeshalmena. Yeshalmena means lehashlim, to make it whole. So Rav Shlomo Zalman says, you have to understand that the rules of Nezikin are there to make somebody whole. They're not talking about the value of something for sale. They're talking about the value to the specific person. So here we're dealing with a big question. How do we repair the past? So according to Rav Shlomo Zalman, according to Chazon Ish, and also according to to Rosh Vice, which I'll get into in a moment, you have to see the damage from the damaged person's eyes. And that's how you decide how much you pay the person. And it's true that Bava said what he said, but he described a salesman. When you sell things, then you're only interested in how much other people want to buy them. But when you hurt somebody's personal belongings, that's costly. So that's what the Chazon Ish said, and also Rav Shlomo Zalman. Rav Asher Weiss, it's harder for him to say it so straightforward. He feels uneasy because Rava really said what he said, and Chazon Ish said, big problem I have with this is, let's say somebody destroyed my cell phone, okay, and on my cell phone I had pictures of my mother who passed away, okay, so that's hard for me to lose a cell phone. So I might say, wow, this cell phone for me is worth 1,000,000 shekels. So now the other person will have to pay 1,000,000 shekels. That doesn't make sense, says Rav Asher Weiss, because if you're going to subjective meanings of things, then you can really lose it. So Rav Asher Weiss says, in these cases, the Beit Din needs to look and make a decision and do something rational that makes sense. You can't really go to the subjective feeling of somebody towards, I don't know, his grandparents' sofa or a special art piece that is not worth a lot, but it's just very sentimental. You'll get nowhere. You can't do the Dinei Nezikim that way. So you have to somehow work your way between what other people would actually pay for something like that and what would be a rational thing to ask for in repayment for something personal that has been destroyed. So I'm just summing up the first part before we go into damaging of a person's body. Okay, because if we're talking about hurting somebody's house, so we see a house is a space where you live in, but it's also filled with sentimental value. And that's why how much payment will you have to pay for the house? It's not only how much you would pay for this, but you also have to see what it means to this person to have his house destroyed. And that would be a different way of making a decision how much to pay. And that's what the Chazon Ish, Rav Shlomo Zalman, and Rav Asher Weiss say that you have to do, even though the Gemara, it sounded that you will have to pay nothing if you destroyed somebody's personal belongings. So that was the first part of looking at this question, understanding that the meaning of objects is more than just how much they cost to sell. That the sentimental value has its own money, and if we look at that, we see that you can't really repair sentimental value, but you do have to take it into account when you're trying to pay somebody for the damage that has happened to them. So that's when somebody hurts objects. What happens if somebody hurts my body? So here, the Gemara says something totally different. At the end of Perek Chovel, says the Gemara that even if you pay somebody money, you are not forgiven until you have asked his repentance. You have to say you're sorry. And they learned that from Sarah and Avimelech. And the Gemara says that even if you paid a ton of money, you still have to say you're sorry. And there's a very big discussion. Why? Why is it so different when you hurt somebody's body? And why are you asking somebody to say that they're sorry? And this goes to an even deeper point when you learn Perek Chovel. The beginning of Perek Chovel, and I understand Rabbanit Yael taught a shiur regarding that. It's a very famous beginning and strange beginning of the Perek that the Torah says, Ayin tachat ayin. And Chazal say, oh no, Ayin tachat ayin, no. They mean money. You don't take eyes out, you don't take ears out, you pay money. But the Torah said that you have to take another person's eye out. So why? If really what the Torah meant was that if somebody took my eye out, I have to get money for it. Why did the Torah write these passages describing this horrible Kamma that we take each other's eyes out? Well, what's the idea behind it? So a famous philosopher, famous nowadays, Immanuel Levinas, wrote about that the reason that the Torah wrote that a person has to have his eye taken out is not because it's what the Torah thinks has to be. Definitely the Torah thinks that you have to get money if you lost your eyesight. So why write it that way? Says Levinas, because you have to understand that the minute you give payment for hurting somebody's body, you have created justice that is good for the strong and for the rich. If I have a lot of money, I'll just hurt your bodies and pay you money. No problem. Because if money can solve the issue, and if money can repair the past, then rich people will just hurt other people and pay them. So the Torah comes and says you have to know that money cannot fix hurt. Never. It's true. We want you to pay because that will help somebody get better. But don't elude yourself. That's the least you could do is to pay back. It's not really fixing the past. And that's why you have to say you're sorry. But even after you said you're sorry, you still didn't fix the past, because when you hurt somebody, especially if you hurt their body, the truth is it cannot really be repaired. Never, ever. And that's what the Torah wants to tell us. So going back to my question, can we repair the past? I'm saying hard things here. No, we can't. We can't undo what happened. But that doesn't mean we can't do anything. There is a way to help people overcome damage. It will never be the same, but we have to give them money, and we have to give them our passion, and we have to help them to make them grow and to get well. But the hurt will always be there. And that's very hard to hear, because when you hurt somebody, all you want is just to fix it as if it never happened, but that will never be the case. But I want to finish with a very interesting statement at the end of the 8th parak. The last thing that the Gemara has to tell us is that even though the best way to repair the past is to give you money and then to say you're sorry, a person who did not get anybody to say that they're sorry can't pray to God and say, please, God, may you hurt him back. That is not allowed, says the Gemara. The Gemara says, if you pray for a person for well-being, so then you'll be answered first. Like when Abraham prayed for Abimelech, he was answered first. But if you pray against somebody and want to have him revenged by God, God will revenge on you first. So that's a very interesting statement of the Gemara, because it says, and I'll conclude with that when I'm hurt by someone, the most dangerous thing that can happen is that I will hurt him back. Because what will happen then? He hurt me, I'll hurt him back, and then there'll be no end to this, and nothing will be repaired, and everything will just go down the drain, worse and worse and worse. So we have to hold ourselves and understand that when hurt has taken place, we can never totally repair it, but we have to be very, very careful for making it worse. So even when we're in the hardest time, we always have to be careful not to go down the slope, but always climb up and find a way to do the best we can in order to repair what has been damaged. So Bezrat Hashem, I pray that we won't forget that, because I know that many times we wish that bad things that happen, hurt in body, hurt in objects, we would want it all to go away, but things can't be undone. We have to deal with them to the best we can. And what the Torah does, and what Baba Kamma teaches us, is that even if we can't undo the past, we have to do the best we can in order to fix the future. So Bezrat Hashem, I hope the learning of Baba Kamma will help us with that.